Hi guys, it's Collin. I'm going to be making the video this week. This is my first video that I've ever made. So bear with me. I'll probably make some mistakes, but I'm going to practice up and we're going to get there. Here is what we're making this week. We're going to make the If the Shoe Fits Mini Quilt. It's so cute. This one's a little bit bright, so it might hurt your eyes, but I had a lot of fun with it. And we're going to make another one today. I'm going to show you how to do it. So I have my color chart. I have my poly mesh hooped here in my stabilizer. This is a 10 by 10 mighty hoop. I'm making the 8 by 8 mini quilt today because that's the hanger that I have. And your hoop might look a little bit different if you're using a single needle. I use a multi-needle machine, so it might look a little bit different, but the same steps will apply to you. So we have just a few pieces of fabric. This is a really easy one. I love the easy ones. We have our quilt batting, our top fabric, our edges, and then I have another piece for the back fabric too. So you can use the cut chart to get the right pieces. And the first step is going to be to stitch the placement line. So I'm going to bring this over the machine and we're going to stitch the placement line and then we'll go from there. Okay, we're back. So I stitched it in black so that hopefully you could see it. When you're making it at home, you can use black or you can use white or a complementary color or whatever you want. You won't see this line. This is just so we know where to place our batting. So the first step is I'm going to place my batting right here. You want to make sure that it covers the whole area. So actually I cut mine pretty close. Let me try it this way. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it's going to cover this whole area. What we're going to do next is we're going to stitch down the batting, and then that will allow us to cut the batting out of the seam allowance, which I think it makes it turn a little bit nicer. I get crisper edges and my corners are a little bit rounder when I cut out the batting. So Jen put that step in there for us. And okay, so we're going to stitch this down and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. And what we're going to do now is cut the batting out of the seam allowance. So again, I think this just gives it a little bit crisper of an edge and my corners poke out a little bit more easily. And I think it just looks a little bit better. You don't have to do this. It's totally optional. Some people don't. Actually, I don't think Jen does typically. She probably has a better iron than I do. I don't know, but mine turn out better when I cut this out. So I'm going to keep doing it. So I'm using a regular cotton quilt batting. You can get a high loft batting, and gosh, those are beautiful. You can get different foams. You can get all kinds of different things. I have 4 very hungry children, and so my craft budget is a little bit lower than some might be. So I buy the cheap batting, to be totally honest. I think it works almost as well. You can also use 2 layers if you want a little bit more loft without getting the fancy stuff. But if you have a bigger craft budget than I do, then go for it. The premium ultra loft batting is gorgeous. So here we go. We're just about done. I'm going to cut this out. And then once we're done with this, we're going to tack down our main fabric. So now this is going to be the fabric that you're going to start to see. So you want to make sure you iron it first. Put it on nicely in the way you want. Oops, I flipped it. This is going to be the top. So if you have a fabric that's directional, make sure you have it going the right way. I have these cute little eyeballs. And honestly, I think they could go either way. So we're going to put them this way. And the next step I'm going to run is going to tack down this piece of fabric right here so that we can start to do the quilting and the fabric won't shift. So I'm going to tack it down and then I'll be back. All right, so now that we've tacked our fabric down, we can go ahead and run the quilting stitch. So normally when I'm making it and when you're making it, we'll just do those kind of back to back. I only showed you here so that you can see. So this stitch is placed a little bit further outside of that batting line so that there's no batting in the seam allowance. So I'm going to use a subtle white background on this one for the stitching this time. Sometimes I like to go really bold and contrast, and then this time I'm going to let the embroidery shine a little bit more. So I'm going to make my quilting a little bit more subtle, but there's so many different ways you can do it. It's going to be cool. So I'm going to do the quilting and I'll come back in just a sec. Okay, so I'm back with the quilting. Now it's a little subtle. I don't know if you can really see it. It is pretty subtle because again, sometimes I make them really bold, like this one. I went crazy and I put the black quilting so you could really see the cat and the moon and the stars. And on this one, I thought, you know what, I'm going to let the embroidery pop out a little bit more. So it's just whatever look you want. So there are a lot of color changes to do the main stitching part. So I'm not going to come back after every one of those. I'm going to run all the embroidery and then we'll do the sides together. Okay, so we are back. I have run all of the embroidery here. And then I also went ahead and ran the placement stitch for the sides. So I did that so that we'd be able to start right away. Um, I love this. This is so cute. I'm glad I did this little quilting because this is really bright. And so I have these little pieces for the sides. So what we're going to do is basically flip and stitch, right? Like all the bags. Well, we wouldn't do it that way because then the pumpkins would be upside down. But you get the idea. So I'm going to use this green and then these two right here. And I think it's going to be really fun. And I didn't have exactly the right shade of orange, but that's okay. I've noticed that non-crafters like us, they don't ever notice that the way we do. So if you don't have the exact right color, it's okay. Just use what you have. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our piece and it's going to start stitching on this side first. So we're going to hold this right here. We're going to do it right sides together, right? So my piece is solid, so it doesn't matter. But if you have a print, make sure you have it the right way. The first stitch is going to stitch it down like this, right? And then we're going to flip it over, but I'll show you that in a second when we get back. Just make sure you have a seam allowance here. So you can't line it right here, right? You got to line it more like right here. I try and do about 1/4 inch over the line. So there we go. We'll be right back. All right. So this one, stitch this right here, right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to push it over and press it down like this, right? So you can either hold it or you can tape it. I am like Jen and I typically don't use a lot of tape, but if you want to, it's actually probably better if you can tape it down. This is just a cheap masking tape since I prefer to spend my money on fabric and not tape. I buy the cheap stuff. That's okay. So fold it over. Now what we're going to do next is it's going to stitch it down from about here to here, and then we're going to move on to the next side. Okay, so see how it stitched it down right here? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this one more time. I'm going to run both stitches this time and then come back when it's done so we can do the top. So again, I'm going to put it over about 1/4 inch. I'm going to line it up right here. It's going to stitch right here. Then I'm going to flip it over, tape it down, and it's going to run right here. So it'll be done here when I come back. Okay, we're back and we have both of our sides all the way ready to go. They're done. So now we're going to do the top and the bottom. We're going to start with the top and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stitch, flip, stitch. Okay, so I'm using a directional fabric. So I want to put it right sides down and I want to put it upside down to make sure that the pumpkins are right side up when we do it. So I always test first just to make sure because I have definitely put it on upside down before. Every time I get a little confident, I just go ahead and oh no, pumpkins upside down. So here we go. You want to make sure you're leaving 1/4 inch here. And that's basically so your fabric doesn't pull out of the seam later. So I'm going to fussy line it up a little bit just to make sure that I can see some of those cute little pumpkins. So I'm going to move it up just a little teeny bit. You can also do this when cutting your fabric to be sure you're cutting it to the right size you need. I just don't really do that. So we're going to go and I'm going to stitch this one down and then we'll come back and I'll show you what to do next. All right, so I put my pumpkins on and it looks like I got pretty close. So it's not perfect, right? I can redo it if I want to, but I think I'm just going to leave it. I would like it maybe a little bit more if they were perfectly centered, but they're not, and that's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ready to flip this over. Jen made a recent change in the pattern to allow the corners to kind of come out a little bit better and to have them be just a little bit nicer. So we're going to cut this down. Now, if you already used a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you don't need to cut this top piece. I used a little bit more because I wanted my pumpkins in the same place. Right, so we're going to cut this and then we're going to cut down the sides too. So you want to be mindful of where your stitching is and that you don't cut too far, right? But I'm going to cut to be about even with that, right? So what that does is it's going to take some of that extra bulk that's in the corner here. If we had fabric this way and fabric this way and fabric every which way, right? So we're going to cut this down just a little bit. It's a small change to the file, but it can make a really big difference for your final product. So I'm going to go back to machine and it's going to stitch this down for me here. And then I'm going to do the bottom one and we'll come back to talk about the back. All right, so all my borders are put on. And I know I said we were going to talk about the back, but I lied. We're actually going to talk about the hanger right here. So see how this finished one has this little hanger here that you can put on a hanger. So we need to make that. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to stitch the placement so we know where to put it. Now there's measurement for it in the cut chart. But if you want to use a different material, or you want to use a ribbon, or you want to do something else, first stitch the placement stitch so you know how much you have to cut. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that, and then we'll be right back. All right, we have our placement stitch here for the loop, and here's my loop. So I just cut a rectangle. It was 2.5 by 9.5. So this is about 4 3/4 right here. So I just folded it in half, lengthwise, and then I folded it in half widthwise, and then I'm going to stick it right like that. So everyone does this a little bit differently. What I like to do is I kind of line it up with the bottom of this, and that way I know it's going to be straight. Otherwise, it can get a little bit tilted there and no one's going to notice, but I feel better just using this line right here. So that's what I do. And then, you make sure it's within those little lines. These placement lines are going to be hard to see in the video. Because I forgot to use a contrasting color. So sorry, but here we go. So you're going to line this up right here. Make sure that the loop part, the part that's folded over, is down. You don't want to put the folded part up. So here we go, down right here, right here. I'm going to line it up with this bottom thing. Again, that's what I choose. You might do something differently. That's okay. Grab a piece of tape, tape it outside of your stitch line, just like that. Okay, we're going to stitch it and come back. All right, so we're back, and we have our hanging loop is sewn down now. So it starts stitching in the middle, which is really nice because it doesn't shift your fabric. When this gets cut off and we're done, this part will stick out right here. So I think that's going to be cute with the purple. For the back, which is the last step, you have 2 pieces, and you can use the cut chart to size your pieces. We're going to put them down like this. Remember, right side's down because we're going to turn this right side out when it's done sewing. And exactly where you place them doesn't matter. Everyone's going to have their own preference. You can do whatever works for you. I also finish both of the edges. I fold over both the edges. And I think in the tutorials, Amanda typically just does the one. I do both, and that's okay. Whatever works for you. Remember, right side's down. So you just want to make sure, and I always take this time to double check and make sure that all my edges have at least a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Sometimes I cut my pieces a little bit too small, and then I realize that I have to go back and recut them. These are beautiful. So, okay, we're going to run the final stitch, and then we'll go from there. All right, we're done. So let's take this bad boy out. Let's see how it worked. Now, these magnetic hoops are scary. So, all right, get that out of here. So, here we go. Everything, you can pull the tape out. I just kind of cut it out. So I like to cut my corners first. It's a habit left over from years and years of sewing before I started embroidering. There's probably different ways or better ways to do it. This is just how I do it. However you do it, totally okay. Cut these corners out, and then remember we want to leave about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you could measure it and cut it with a rotary cutter and a ruler, and that would actually probably be faster. I might try that next time. But for now, this will work just fine. So we're going to cut it out. And this is where I start to get excited because we almost get to see it. And I'm always a little bit nervous too because, like, what if I put something on upside down or backwards or, But let's flip it right side out and see the magic happen. Here we go. Ooh, so far, all right, looks pretty good. So I use this is my favorite tool. We have a lovely woman in the group, and her husband makes these, and they are absolutely amazing. And if it's okay with her, I could tell you where I got it, and maybe you can order one from her husband. But either way, you need a turning tool. Helps a lot with the corners to kind of poke them out. There we go. So we'll press it, of course, but so far, I think it looks really good. I'm really excited. And actually, let me grab the hanger. So I left it in the wrong spot, but here is my little hanger. So I got this from Jen. Hopefully you pre-ordered one. If not, it's not too late. You can get one. And it's super cute. This is for a kid's room, so it's bright and happy, and I love it. And I hope you love it too. And I can't wait to see yours. Thanks very much for being with me in my first video. My teenagers are going to be so proud, and we'll see you next time.